Well,
Yeah.
so on the other hand, I don't see how it makes sense to you. I just don't think.
Right. You come and Sardis pulled in $8,000 and you give him 5 to wait to him.
That's what I'm saying. Now, I've always looked at her zone, so anytime I'm down, I will call. Great. Lately I've been using it so much the past few weeks. Yeah, but listen, maybe I can find someone else. You know what I mean?
When is this thing over?
Today. We're having our last meeting today. But
I think maybe you maxed out with him.
what?
I think you maxed out with him.
Yeah?
I think so. You learn from him the things that you need to learn.
I learned a lot of things from him. It's just that I did learn a lot.
It's just the daily coaching that you're paying for now. In other words, the chachma you learned already, right?
Very good at every search that comes up is a major part. With American Spirit 2, he was amazing. With just a lot of, he's a very smart, like not emotionally involved person, so it's very, very good for me. But it's not, I don't want $5,000 for that. I don't know what to say. Like
Yeah, I got you. Why don't you ask Yossi? Why don't you ask Yossi Darren what he thinks?
Well, Yossi Darren, listen, Yossi Darren's a big fan. He also has a bigger bus. And he's $5,000 not making a big expense to him.
Does he still use him, Yossi?
Yeah. It's not just the chachma. He's there to constantly, basically, because what I learned is that when you approach a donor at a place,
Levi, I have a shear at 11 o'clock. I'm starting right now, so I just got to jump.
Okay.
I'll call me in an hour. Okay.
My meeting is in an hour. I guess I'll call you afterwards.
You can call me at 1:45. Call me at 1:45.
Okay. I'll talk to you.
Yeah. I'll come back. Morning. Yeah. Okay, welcome. Good morning, everybody.
Good morning, Rabbi. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning. Rabbi, I saw you on CP24 and you were marvelous.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah. I can give you my autograph if you want. Yeah, for sure. Nice that came out. There we go. All my skills on TV comes from this class and on practice. How to think on my feet,
There we are.
Welcome, Basil. How you
Thank
doing,
you.
Basil? How you feeling, Basil?
Not too bad, thank you. How are you?
Baruch Hashem, Baruch Hashem.
Baruch Hashem.
Everyone else okay? Yeah, Baruch Hashem.
Baruch Hashem. Yeah. That Hanukkah program was beautiful. I could only see it on Facebook, but it was wonderful that it was live streamed.
Yeah, sure.
It looked
Very nice program.
amazing.
It was a nice concept, yeah. Nice.
Like all the other events that come from the shul.
Yeah, Baruch Hashem.
They were really good.
Yeah. Okay. Anyway, so we'll get started just in a minute. Just gonna...
Okay, so mute.
Well, Eddie's here, so we can start. Okay.
Morning, Rabbi.
Good morning, Eddie. Good morning.
Sorry I'm late.
No problem. We're just on time. We're
Good.
just on time. Okay. Welcome, everybody. So we're continuing our Kabbalah of creation, and we were discussing the laws of the Noachide code, and we did basically 6 out of the 7 commandments. Today we're going to finish the 7th commandment, and then we finish up that part of the Kabbalah of creation. So the 7th commandment, the one that we didn't discuss yet, was the prohibition that God gave at the very beginning of creation, at the time of Adam and Noah. He put into place a sexual code, a code of sexual conduct that's considered moral. And obviously, within that code, there are a number of prohibitions, but they're all included in this one commandment to be sexually moral. And within that law is a prohibition against incest, a prohibition against adultery, a prohibition against bestiality, and other forbidden sexual relationships. And it all starts with God says to man was alone, Adam and Eve, remember, right at the beginning of creation. Adam is there all alone. And he's very lonely, he's wallowing in his loneliness. And he says to God, help me, I'm all alone. And God says, okay, I will make for you a helpmate against you, opposite you. Okay, so God said to Adam, okay, you want company. Okay, so we'll give you company. You want a relationship. You want to enter into a relationship. You want some love, which is fair, God says. And so what God did, he split Adam in half, or he took the rib out of Adam and he created the woman. Hence the name man and woman. Man, woman means from man, right? Isha also means Isha, from Ish. So there was a being called Ish, which existed. Many said it was an androgynous being. It had both the male and the female parts to it. And then God split the two and created male and female. But God said, hey, listen carefully to the word. I'm going to make a helpmate against you. So part of the attraction of marriage is the oppositeness of the marriage. When there's too much likeness, marriages don't work well. So hence the prohibition against incest, because incest it's the same DNA going around in the same circle. So God wanted us to be like strangers, you know. The whole idea of a marriage is that the two people should be a little bit strange to each other. And then there is the romance and the mystery and the finding out new things. And God said, if you're going to pursue an incestuous relationship, have relations with a sister, or with a brother, or with a father, or with a mother, it's too close, right? So we need to create a helpmate opposite. That means there has to be the mystery, there has to be the separateness, there has to be something that you find that's new about each other, which is a very, very beautiful concept. And that's really what makes a marriage work well is when you're not familiar with the other person, something new, and that's like sort of a, the mystery of marriage. It's something that you're excited by it. But when it's the same person, when it's an incestuous relationship, it doesn't really work. Therefore, it says over there, God said to Adam and Eve, and therefore, a man shall leave his father and mother and cleave unto a woman, and they shall become one flesh. Remember that verse? I think we spoke about that many times. But listen carefully to the words that God uses. He doesn't just say, okay, now I've made male and female, and now the two of you can come together and cohabitate and become one. No. He says, and therefore, a man shall leave the father and mother. That means you have to leave your family. Okay? Stay away from the family, right? And move to the woman. Even though one can argue and say, well, Eve was also like sort of from the same matzah pudding, from the same dough, same rib, right? Okay, it's not so simple, but the wording of the Torah is clear for the future. Therefore, a man shall leave his father and mother and cleave unto a woman, they shall become one flesh. So there's an emphasis here of leaving father and mother. And that's what the Torah says, and the Torah says clearly also that you shall cleave unto a woman. So that the Torah believes that the way to have a successful marriage is through a woman, which also is a prohibition against numerous other kinds of relationships, which I'm not going to get into this class because it's a hot potato. Definitely not bestiality, let's put it that way, right? It has to be a woman, it can't be an animal, even if it's a female animal. Well, those are the verses of the Torah. And the Torah says, therefore, you shall cleave unto each other, become one flesh, and as the Torah says, you shall be fruitful and multiply. That's the mitzvah of the Torah, that's the mitzvah that was given to Adam and Eve. It's interesting that mitzvah of being fruitful and multiply is not one of the 7 Noachide code. And, the Torah actually reiterates it in a number of places for the whole world. The Torah says, Lo toyu bara, the world was not created for chaos, el l'sheves yitzad, it was created to create a civilization. A civilization is created by families and people getting together and having children, etc., etc. So that is sort of the goal. But that's not included in one of the 7 Noachide code. The 7 Noachide code is given to Moses at Sinai. The Noachide code only includes within it that when you do have the relations, they should be relations which is moral and ethical, which is the correct way that God wanted the perpetuation of the species, or relations which lead to a healthy perpetuation of the species. As we know, within incest, there's a problem, many problems today with genetic diseases. As we know, that people that marry into the same families, even cousins sometimes, there can be genetic diseases. Like for instance, by Jews, there's Tay-Sachs. By African Americans, there are other illnesses, sickle cell, and there's other groups that they have certain illnesses within that family of people. So we see that the farther you move away from the original core, the healthier you become. there are tests that people take today. So there are ways of finding out in advance today for many of these genetic diseases, hereditary diseases. You can actually take tests in advance and find out what they are and test for them, but it's not exhaustive. There are always new forms, new hereditary illnesses which they don't even know about, and which they can't even test for. So when the Torah says to marry someone out of the family, it's a good thing. You see a lot of the people a lot of the families that married constantly within the same family, there are many of those illnesses that surface because both sides have the same, they're both carriers of the same hereditary disease. And we find that those families become ultimately dysfunctional because of the intermarriage within the family itself. So that's one of the prohibitions, is the prohibition against incest. But the idea is that God said, okay, we want to have a civilized world, a world that will be balanced, a world that will be healthy. You do it the way I tell you to do it, which is to stay away from certain behaviors and or certain recipes which are not going to lead to a civilized world, and then everything will be good. So that's one of the parts of that commandment. And there's also obviously a commandment against adultery, which adultery is really also another commandment which they were already told before, was not to steal, right? Not to theft. So adultery could be also part of a form of theft. It's like stealing someone's heart. You know, you make a promise to someone, and then you break the promise of marriage. I always tell people that you know, in marriage, when you get married, there is a promise of marriage. You know, and if you pride yourself in your word is your bond. That's the way people are supposed to be. You know, keep your word. So you respect each other's possessions. But you also respect the promise that you gave each other under the chuppah. And when there is a form of adultery, that's not just breaking the commandment, this commandment of the proper sexual behavior, but also it's not a mensch, you know, not being menschlich. It's not, you give someone your word, you give someone your promise, you need to keep it. But we look at some of the patriarchs, the matriarchs that lived before the advent of the Torah. So they probably were for sure listening to the Noachide code. And there are many sections in the Talmud where it says that the patriarchs, the matriarchs, they even kept the 613 mitzvahs before the Torah was given. So one of the famous questions that's asked is on our grandpa Jacob. We know that Jacob married one wife. He was trying to marry a wife named Rachel, and then he was duped by his old father-in-law, Lavan, and he did the old switcheroo. And when he woke up the next morning, instead of finding the love of his life, Rachel, what did he find? He found Leah. So what does Jacob say thereafter? Jacob says that, okay, he accepted it, that he was married, he married her, even though he was duped into it. He could have walked away, but he didn't. He said, okay, I'll work another 7 years now for your daughter, Rachel. And so Jacob ends up marrying two sisters, Rachel and Leah, two sisters, right? And they also had maidservants who the tradition is that they were also sisters. That's Bilhah and Zilpah. So he married two sets of sisters, right? The question is, are you allowed to marry two sisters? Yeah, two pairs of sisters, right? But are you allowed to marry? We said Jacob used to keep the Torah, sure he kept the Noachide code. So some argue and say that was not forbidden in the Noachide code. Even though the Noachide code forbids incest, it doesn't forbid marrying a sister-in-law. Okay, it forbids the marriage of a father or a mother, or marrying a brother or a sister. But a sister-in-law means the sister of your wife, right? In those days, for sure, you were allowed to marry a number of wives. That was still before the law of Cher and Gershon. Only in Judaism, you were allowed to marry a few wives, as we know. It was only recently, in the days of Rabbi Gershon, which is about 1,000 years ago, that they put a ban against marrying a few wives. So Rabbi Gershon was one of the great leaders. He was the Mor HaGoel, he was the leader of Jewry in the Ashkenazic Jewry, and he was also accepted in the Sephardic communities as being the leader of the Jewish people. He put a ban into place. I think he had some bad experiences in his own life as well, along those lines. So he put a ban into place that you're only allowed to have one wife. He also put a ban into place. There were 3 bans that the Rabbi Gershon put into place 1,000 years ago, which are today accepted as common Jewish law. And it's law everywhere else too as well. But in those days, yet it wasn't common practice. You're not allowed to marry 2 wives, and also you can't offer a divorce by force. You can't give a forced get. Based on Torah law, a man was allowed to just throw a get at his wife without her accepting it. Rabbi Gershon put the place and said, no. You can't just throw a get at somebody. You have to, the other person needs to accept it. And if they don't accept it, there is no get. So that was a law that was put in by Rabbi Gershon. And the third law that he put into place was that you can't read someone else's mail. You shouldn't read someone else's mail. It's based on a story in his own life, which is not now the time for it, but those are the 3 laws he put into place. And that was accepted in the Jewish community as the law, that you are only allowed to have one spouse, and you can't force a get, and you can't read someone else's mail. But be as that may, Jacob was before that time, so he married a few wives, which was accepted, practiced within the Jewish community, going back 3,500 years ago. 3,600 years ago, as far as that. But they were keeping Noachide code. So the question is, how was he able to marry the 2 sisters? So some say that the Noachide code did not forbid marrying a sister-in-law. Torah law for sure forbids that. That's one answer that's given. There was the Noachide code did not forbid, and therefore he was allowed to do it. Another explanation is that even though Jacob kept all the laws of the Torah, but there's a possibility that even though Rachel and Leah came from the same father, we know Lavan was the father of Rachel and Leah. Perhaps they had a different mother. Right? Perhaps, so maybe in those days the law was that if it was the same father, it's not so bad. If it was a different mother, you were allowed to marry the 2 sisters because they weren't really consistent sisters, complete sisters. So we don't know who the mothers of Rachel and Leah were, and so there's a possibility that they had 2 separate mothers, which would maybe explain to some degree how Jacob was able to marry the 2 sisters. There is another law that says that Rachel and Leah, they became Jewish, they converted to Judaism. So after you convert to Judaism, you don't maintain your old relations, perhaps. And so even though they were technically sisters, biologically, they were not halachically considered in those days as sisters because they became Jewish. So it's like Hashem becomes your parent. Like we know a convert, we say Ben Avrohom Avinu or Ben Sarah. It's like God is the parent of a convert. So they have like the parents is not so connected anymore. So therefore, perhaps that would be another explanation. But I saw a very beautiful explanation from the Rebbe. And the Rebbe said like this. He says, yes, there were the laws of the Torah, which the patriarchs and matriarchs took upon themselves. The future laws of the Torah, they already knew many of the laws. So probably they knew that law too, that you're not allowed to marry your sister-in-law. but there was the Noachide code, and the Noachide code would override any other law. That means the laws of the future Torah that the patriarchs and matriarchs knew about already were futuristic laws that they took upon themselves because they knew that was going to be the law of the Torah. But the Torah wasn't given yet. The Torah was given only a few hundred years later. But what they did have was the Noachide code. And as we said, Noachide code reigned supreme in those days. That was the main law. And what was the Noachide code? The Noachide code was you're not allowed to steal, you're not allowed to lie. You have to be honest. So honesty would override this moral marriage law, which would only come later years in the Torah, that you can't marry your sister-in-law. Where does honesty fall into this case? Well, Jacob gave Rachel his word that he would marry her. Right? So even though his father-in-law duped him, he wanted to keep his word. So therefore, even though he married a sister, and he really felt bad about marrying sister-in-law, but he gave Leah his word, not knowingly that by marrying her, he gave her the word. So he felt, I gave my word to this lady, even though I thought it was the other one. I have to keep her. And he also gave a word to Rachel that he was going to marry her because he worked for her for 7 years. So he kept on telling her, I'm going to marry you, I'm going to marry you. So here we had honesty versus a futuristic pietistic law of not marrying a sister-in-law. So the law, the Noachide law code was the prime law then, and the Noachide code was based on giving a word and giving your promise. So once Jacob gave a promise to Leah and to Rachel that he was going to live with them and be with them, be their husband, he felt that he had to keep his word. It's a very interesting sort of thing. So this keeping the word was even more than the law, which was going to come into place a few hundred years later in the Torah, which the prophetic forefathers knew already about. So this teaches us how important, giving a word is a word. A word is a bond. That's the Noachide code. Not to steal, to be like a decent, civil human being, and to be an honest, integral person. Keep your integrity in place. Jacob wanted to keep his integrity in place because he promised the both girls that he would marry them. He didn't want to back out. He wanted to keep his word, his promise. And that's the Noachide code. So the Noachide code would override the future law of the sexual code, which was going to come into place only by the Torah. So I thought this is quite an interesting sort of development in this whole idea of what we're talking about. So we have over here the Noachide code that we finished now, and you can ask me a couple of questions about it later if you like. But the Noachide code, Maimonides writes that the Noachide code today is just as important as it was in the days of Noah. And that he says that it's the responsibility of the Jewish people to be a light unto the nations, to teach Noachide law to the people of the world. And the Rambam says that when Jewish people are in a situation of influence, we must teach the world the basic laws of morality and civilization. That's our job, to be a light unto the nations. So it's our job when we're able to, as part of the mitzvahs of the Torah. Just like we have regarding Jews, it says, Kol Yisrael Arevim Zeh Lezeh, all Jews are responsible for each other. We're also responsible for all the people of the world, to make sure that the world should be a civil world. So a Jew says, what's in my business what's going on in Ukraine or in Russia? It has nothing to do with me. What does that have to do with me? It's the other side of the world. It has nothing to do with me. No, it doesn't work that way. You say, some people say, let this one die, let that one die. Who cares? They're all a bunch of anti-Semites. They murdered the Jews' face 100 years ago, 70 years ago. Let them get what they deserve. I hear all these kind of things. No, that's not the answer. The answer is that as Jews, our primary responsibility, one of our primary responsibilities today, is to try to be a light unto the nations and to influence and to bring civility wherever we can. That's our job. To stand up to the people, the terrorists, and to the dictators of the world who stand and try to destroy the world. It's our job to teach Noachide code. Now, not to murder, not to steal, not to commit adultery, not to, what we said, to be honorable, respectful, to honor to honor animals, to honor the parents, to honor all those things we spoke about in all the laws of the Noachide code. To be a civil society, to have dinim. So the Rambam says that when the Jewish people, when we have influence, we must teach the world those ideas. And so even though for many, many years, Jews were not allowed to say a peeps, would be killed if we exerted our influence. That's the way it was 100 or 200 years ago. Jews couldn't give their opinion. You gave an opinion, you're putting your life at risk. Just for giving your opinion. But today, Jewish people have Baruch Hashem, we have a lot of influence. We have a beautiful Israel today. We're a player at the table, so to speak, and we are respected by the world. And even though there is obviously lots of anti-Semitism, all of that, but part and parcel of our Jewish heritage, our Jewish laws is that we should teach the world their laws. Yes, to mix in. That's what it means, to mix in if we can. To mix in when we see the world is descending into chaos and to a jungle. Our job is to come and to teach, to educate the world with the Noachide code. So this is a very important law. Like a lot of Jews say, well, let's not mix in. No, Torah says your job is to be a meddler, to mix in, to give influence. And it was years ago when we were in Israel, we were taught that the Gentiles that live in Israel, we were taught that they must accept upon themselves the Noachide code. That was a prerequisite for living in Israel. You didn't have to be Jewish to live in Israel 2,000 years ago, but you had to accept upon yourself. It was called a ger toshav. A ger toshav was a resident of Israel. A resident of Israel. He didn't have to accept Judaism, but they had to accept Noachide code. Otherwise, they couldn't live in Israel. And the Rambam takes it a step further and says, not only is it for ger toshav, is it for those people who lived in Israel, but our job is, if we can, to bring these laws onto the rest of the world as well. The old days, the Jews couldn't have influence barely in the borders of Israel. Who was thinking even about outside of Israel? But today the world has changed a lot. And we're able to bring, so it's very important that if you ever meet up with somebody on the plane, you sit on the plane, you're sitting next to somebody. So if they're Jewish, you can speak to them about a mitzvah, a Jewish mitzvah, whatever. But sitting next to, you happen to be sitting next to somebody who's not of the Jewish faith. What do? You're on a plane for 10 hours, you're traveling, I don't know, to where, to Cochabamba, or you're traveling to Africa or whatever. So you're sitting with somebody all the time. So what are you going to talk to them person about? They can talk about the movie, about the meal, about the, what I mean? Like, you're sitting next to the person, right? About the book that they're reading and you're reading. So the Rebbe said, it's about, you can talk to them about Noachide code. Talk to them about getting together with the rest of the world to bring civility and menschlichkeit and morality to all the people of the world. And that's a conversation you can have. That's a conversation you might be able to influence them. Yeah. Anyways, so wish you all well, and Ivan, I see you there somewhere. Can you hear me, Ivan?
Yes, I am in St. John rehab. Sonia had a knee surgery replacement.
Oh, wow. How's she doing?
Slow recovery, but yeah, it's coming, Baruch Hashem.
Okay, so you're in the St.
she-
John's over here on Comer Road.
Yes.
Okay.
She managed yesterday 3 steps up and down.
Okay. So wish her well from us.
Yeah.
Wish her
Thank
for Shlema and tell her we're thinking about it and tell her we miss her at the classes. Yeah.
I know we were kind of.
Rabbi,
Oh, yes.
Rabbi, I am here.
Oh, you're there. Okay. Sonia, we wish you
Yeah,
out
I
of
just
what's your
joined.
Sonia, what's your Hebrew name?
Shoshana
Shoshana Bastova.
Bastova.
Shoshana Vastova, the flower,
Yeah.
the daughter of the good. Very good. Baruch Hashem.
And I'm doing exactly what you said, because now it's the celebration of Hanukkah.
Right.
And where I am placed, it's a place for Jewish people and non-Jewish people.
I know
And I
that.
got about 4 or 5 questions about Hanukkah. What does it
Oh.
mean?
See?
So
See?
I was doing exactly what you were just saying,
I see.
explaining and enjoying. And Ivan is bringing sufganiyot and things like that, so they can share with us a little bit of our holiday.
Yeah, okay. So wish you a happy Hanukkah and the refuah shlema, and may you be well and
Toda
healthy.
rabba.
And may you be able to do the horror shortly.
Rabbi,
Yeah,
Rabbi, quick question.
yeah.
The guys who brought the law in that you shouldn't have 2 wives, did they bring it in for a specific reason, or did they know that it's bad enough to have to look after one?
Eddie, I hope your wife's not on the.
No, she's not.
No, well, there was a particular story you could read up on him. Rabbeinu Gershom. There is a book. It's called. The book is called. It's a book by Marcus Lehman. Actually, it's a good book to read. It's called. I can't remember the name of the book offhand, but it's a book about Rabbeinu Gershom. You can look it up. The book. It tells you the story of his life and how this was part of a story that he had in his personal life. But it was accepted by majority of the Jewish community, and it became Jewish law at the time. It's called Cherem de Rabbeinu Gershom. Cherem is like a very strong law. Like when you put sometimes you put a law into place that if you don't keep it, you're excommunicated. It's called a Cherem. So that was called Cherem de Rabbeinu Gershom, the edict of Rabbeinu Gershom. So that became part of halacha eventually in the Shulchan Aruch, the code of Jewish law. Okay, everybody.
Good Shabbos to everybody.
Everybody, good Shabbos.
Good Shabbos.
Take care.
Rabbi.
A happy Hanukkah. Chag Sameach. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Rabbi.
Sameach.
Wish you better.
Refuah shlema.
I get unwell.
Yeah.
Thank you
Nice
so
to see
much,
you.
everybody.
Shalom.
Thank you.
Wish
Shabbat
your
shalom.
name,
Get
Rabbi.
well soon.
Thank you all. Bye-bye.
Thank
Good
you.
Shabbos. Thank you, Rabbi.